Good evening, you're watching The Big Question. I'm Sanjana. It's been called one of the most consequential years for BRICS since the bloc was formed. We've got new members, renewed ambitions, and a growing sense that the so-called Global South could finally have a stronger collective voice. Now, for India, BRICS is more than a talking shop. It's a platform to balance the pull of Western alliances with the needs and aspirations of emerging economies. It's about shaping rules on trade, technology, and even currency, rather than simply following them. Government sources tell us India is recalibrating its engagement, doubling down on cooperation while managing delicate geopolitical equations. Prime Minister Modi is expected to visit China later this month for the SCO summit, his first trip there since 2018, with BRICS priorities very much on the agenda. So this evening we ask, is BRICS truly positioned to strengthen the Global South, or are the hurdles of politics, economics and trust too high? Joining me to discuss this, I have Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia, Distinguished Fellow at Gateway House and a former Indian envoy to multiple nations, Mithali Nikore, economist and founder of Nikore Associates, should I say welcome back to NDTV Profit, and Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary of India. So let's actually start with why BRICS is being seen as more relevant now than it has been in years. Ambassador Bhatia, what do you see as the core geopolitical force that's pushing BRICS into this renewed prominence? Is it primarily a reaction to Western dominance, or do you think that there's a proactive shared vision that's emerging?
I think it's a bit of both very clearly. BRICS has invested in itself for the past over 2 decades. It has worked very hard, and it must be doing something good, as a result of which so many other countries were keen to join the institution, and many of them have. So the BRICS family is expanding, and it is probably getting stronger. At the same time, I think the immediate context of what has been happening in the last 6 months, but particularly in the last 2 months in India-US relations, has given a special edge to BRICS. It has really shown very clearly that India has other options, and India will have to very carefully exercise them. My final point, the idea is not to have any deep, lasting confrontation with certain powers in the West. The idea is to protect and advance India's interests, and in that context, BRICS serves as a very useful instrument, partly for the leadership of the Global South and partly for enabling India to exercise its strategic autonomy.
Excellent points there. Mithali, from an economic lens, has the slowdown in Western economies and the supply chain diversification created a real opportunity for BRICS to influence global trade rules?
Absolutely, Sanjana, you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, if we look at it, in a very, very strategic lens, for decades, the rules-based order of the World Trade Organization has sort of dominated who we can trade with, how do we trade. Now that entire rules-based order is in a way disrupted. And it gives us an opportunity to say, who all can we engage with? Who all can we speak to? What new supply chains can we come up with? What new value chains can we come up with? And also, how can we make these value chains much more optimized and see how we can trade, in a manner where our competitive advantages are, synchronous and synergized. So, for example, India can easily now, with the new free trade agreement, think about trading much more with the United Kingdom. In fact, a lot of the shrimp exports that were destined for the US may immediately switch course to the UK, because earlier the UK was not an open market. Similarly, when we look at the BRICS grouping, between India, South Africa, and Russia, there is already so much trade that is taking place in in processed foods, in textiles, and these are commodities which the US says, we don't want from these countries anymore. And that's fine because these countries can come together and really create new supply chains. So I do think that there are specific sectors, specific competitive advantages and comparative advantages that the BRICS grouping can explore within itself when it tries to enhance regional value chains.
Excellent points there. Kawal Sibal, how much of BRICS' current positioning is about solidarity and how much is it about, I think what Ambassador rightly also said, strategic competition, particularly between China and the US?
Well, I think we are missing some important points here. BRICS is not a new organization.
Yeah.
In fact, it emerged from Russia, India, China dialogue, which got expanded to BRIC without the S, and eventually BRICS with South Africa joining, and subsequently other partner countries being accepted within the BRICS family. And India has been at the center of it. And for India, BRICS actually is a very important part of our foreign policy. But to what extent BRICS can achieve its aspirations and its ambitions, it will not be easy. Our basic position is that we should not see BRICS as a competitor with the West, and more importantly, not in confrontation with the West, because that would be a folly. It will divide the world into a kind of a BRICS bloc, if you like, and the Western bloc of the G7 bloc. So we very much see BRICS as a platform, as other countries now see, to expand our region, our international role, to play a more important part globally. And then certain basic items on the BRICS agenda are in the interest of everybody. One, of course, is the reform of the international institutions, more voice for the global South. And then in cross-cutting issues like climate change and environment and sustainable development goals, and in all these areas, BRICS countries can work together cooperatively to shape the agenda. But let's keep in mind that BRICS countries have members which are at various stages of economic development, with China being right at the top, I mean, the second most important country on the economic landscape. And in a sense, today, potentially the economic driver of the BRICS. Russia actually was the progenitor of the entire idea. And Russia will continue to play a very, very important role, as will India. But with the inclusion of Iran and some other countries, it will be very difficult to get a consensus on anything but the very broad-based international issues in which there are common interests. Now, take, for example, de-dollarization. This is not an issue which India supports, but this is something which Russia supports very strongly, right from the start, because Russia has been at the receiving end of sanctions, and more importantly, after being excluded from SWIFT and all the sanctions that it has been subjected to, it actually wants to have more space for itself in terms of its economic dealings. But for us, the United States is our biggest economic partner. So how can we talk about de-dollarization? Yes, in terms of use of national currencies, BRICS can provide a very good platform to try and promote this, but we are doing it even outside the BRICS formulation of a formula. Then there is this issue of the new development bank, which doesn't have as much that much capital yet, so it can't replace in any way the World Bank or anything else. The Asian Infrastructure and Development Bank, which is China finance, has more funds at its disposal, but the new development bank does not. So it's limited in terms of what it can do. Then certain big things on the Chinese agenda, for example, the BRI, which has lost momentum, it has nothing to do with BRICS. It is a platform for expanding China's global role, which it can do without the BRICS. And then India-China differences are a major factor in terms of not allowing the BRICS to develop the kind of internet capacities that it should have on the political, economic, and strategic fronts, because we don't see eye to eye on many issues. Our ambitions and goals are different. China wants to dominate not only Asia, but wants to actually be at the center of global governance by 2050 or whatever
Right,
it is,
right.
moving in that direction. So we have to cope with Chinese ambitions. Then China-Russia relationship has become much stronger than before. So we have that challenge in terms of the triangular China-India cooperation, because remember, as I said, it began as Russia-India-China dialogue. So these are some of the issues that BRICS faces. And so therefore, I don't think that BRICS can shape the global agenda. It can contribute to the shaping of global agenda, but
Right.
on its own, it can't. It cannot take on the G7 as easily as we think.
Okay, okay, point well taken. And the strategic drivers then, I think that are clear. But obviously the global south and the world will judge BRICS not by speeches, but by very tangible economic gains then. Mitali, India is backing local currency trade within BRICS, BRICS Plus. Could this realistically cut costs and make trade flows more resilient, or then are we underestimating the risks of currency volatility?
So I think, Sanjana, firstly, I'd like to say very respectfully to Sibyl sir and to the audience, I do think that while today the way geopolitics exists, of course, the economic might of a G7 is completely out of reach for the BRICS countries. But also at the same time, we have to see that the growth winds and the headwinds of growth are in favor of BRICS economies, particularly India and China, but also Brazil and South Africa to a great extent. And at the end of the day, when we are talking about a situation, a scenario where we can see some of the developed economies, especially countries like the US, self-harming and creating a situation where they are in a sense slowing down their own economies by adopting this path towards autarky as opposed to open and free trade, which is something they themselves advocated. We don't know what the new world after 20 years will look like. So I think today, wherever India aligns itself, should be from a long-term perspective, should be from a perspective to say that today BRICS may not be that grouping which can actually decide and which can actually have that financial might to take on a G7, but in the future, can we ever envisage that with the two largest economies in the world, maybe we could actually be that grouping which has that power. So I think from that point of view, it's important to give that importance to the BRICS participation for a country like India. And I think on the point of the currencies, I mean, at the end of the day, if we look back by a few months, it was literally when this entire conversation around the trading currency began, is when the president of the US and got a bit worried that are we going to be switching away? Our country is going to start switching away from trading in the dollar, and are they
Right.
going to start moving towards de-dollarization? At this point in time, may not that may not actually be the case. That may not actually happen. But will it actually save costs for a country like India? Absolutely. It depends on, of course, which currency is chosen for that de-dollarization effort. But at this point in time, to be honest, even commenting on it seems a bit early because
Yeah.
it is fairly unlikely.
Right. I know it's nascent, but we did actually take up this very discussion last evening. But not so much from the de-dollarization perspective, just generally in the sense of what if we started trading in local currencies? Ambassador, do you believe BRICS then can move beyond rhetoric and build mechanisms? We were talking about payment systems, trade agreements that actually shift economic power then towards the global south.
Well, in a way, it is actually happening. The very fact that gradually, but quite in a sure manner, the BRICS countries are developing necessary financial cooperation. Somewhat imperceptibly, it will take time to emerge in a kind of a more visible manner. But I think one thing we should also be very clear, I think for some reason, our American friends have perhaps not fully appreciated and understood as to what BRICS is trying to do. BRICS has never agreed on starting a new currency. We all know that a new currency basically means a very high degree of financial integration. We know how euro was created. That is not on the agenda. It may be on the agenda of one or two other countries, as Ambassador Sybil said, but it is not unanimously accepted within BRICS. So, in that sense, when we are using national currencies in bilateral trade transactions, we are contributing to de-dollarization. De-dollarization is the requisite phenomenon of a multipolar world. It's already happening. Your data, your chart is showing it very clearly. It has gone down, the use of dollar, from 85% to 58%. It's going to go down further. The central point is that the countries which do not have dollar as their currencies are asserting themselves. Their economies are expanding. They are contributing to world GDP more. And therefore, they are basically demanding a more democratic, a more respectful share of economic power for themselves. So I think I see future for BRICS. It has its weaknesses, but I think in the last 3, 4 years, 5 years, it has begun to assert itself much more than it did in the past.
All right. Fair point there. Kanwal Sibal, sir, would deepening economic cooperation within BRICS inevitably force India to pick sides in global economic disputes? And I know that you very comprehensively laid down our challenges with China. Or can we still balance between the blocks?
Look at our trade deficit with China. Despite all the efforts that we've put in all, over the years, the deficit continues to balloon. It is now $100 billion. And China is still not willing to open up their market to us. And in fact, they are now following a little bit what the West has been doing much more, is to apply discreetly sanctions on us. You've seen reports about restricting the export of fertilizers to India, as well as certain equipment that we have needed. In fact, German-made equipment, which they're delaying the shipment of that, etc., etc. So if you talk about economic cooperation within BRICS and this and that, how are you going to address the central problem of the huge deficit that we have with China and the disinclination of China to redress this? The other thing to note is that let's not get caught by what we would like to believe. Who are we signing the FTAs with? We began with Australia. We've signed with the UAE. We signed with the UK. We are negotiating with the European Union. We are doing it with negotiating with Chile and with the GCC. With ASEAN, we are very disappointed. We want to revise that the FTA with ASEAN. So once we get into more and more FTAs with what is largely the Western Bloc, because I will include the Gulf countries having a very strong foot in that bloc, then what are we talking about? What are we talking about? So let's not delude ourselves that BRICS is going to be an answer to our problem. But yes, BRICS has a vital role because somehow the traditional Western hegemony in every sphere has to be countered. And a challenge has to be put before them in order to have much more rebalancing in global affairs. And for India, it's very important that we have a strong foot in the BRICS camp because it gives us options and it gives us an opportunity to shape the BRICS agenda on issues on which all of us have a shared interest.
Right.
And that includes the bilateral issues that we may have with certain BRICS countries. So that's the thing. So let us not look upon BRICS as a kind of a panacea for us and for challenging the West, obviously, because we also want to keep a strong foot in the Western camp. And that's the direction in which we have been going. So we'll have to play this balancing game very astutely and look for equities both in the West as well as within BRICS. And we are doing it reasonably successfully.
Absolutely. So a foot in most of the doors globally. So economic cooperation is one part of the equation. The other is whether BRICS can act with unity on the global stage. So let me come back to you then for a follow-up, sir. With members as diverse and sometimes opposed as India, China, Russia, Is it realistic to expect BRICS to have a unified foreign policy stance then in that case?
No. Look at Iran, for instance. Do you think that there can be a unified stance on Iran? Do India, for example, does India want to get into this entire nuclear issue and all the dispute between Iran and Israel, Iran and the United States? Even Russia has been a little distant. It has not come to the rescue of Iran. Now, as you know, Saudi Arabia has become a little cool towards BRICS. And Turkey also did not attend the last thing. It sent its foreign minister or somebody. Anyway, the within BRICS, we have now South Africa today, as you know, is extremely vocal. Look at these relations with the United States; they have become extremely problematic. Um, so we have to then see whether we can have a common ground with countries like South Africa on some of these issues which are troubling them bilaterally with the United States. Insofar as larger issues of UN reforms and some of the things I mentioned earlier, yes, on that there is a. But again, don't forget that China opposes India's permanent membership of the Security Council.
Correct.
Within the BRICS, we have not been able to get a formulation which supports our aspirations. Bilaterally, Russia supports our permanent membership of the Security Council. But when it comes to the BRICS formulation, it simply says that they favor a greater role for India and Brazil in the United Nations, whatever it means. So even on an issue like that, it's not easy to have a common ground, even though Russia is a solid supporter strategically of India. So these are the kind of issues we should face, but that is not to say in any way that we should diminish the importance of BRICS. You can see
Right.
that Trump is very worried about BRICS. He wants to impose 100% tariffs
Yeah.
on BRICS. Worried at the direction in which BRICS is going. On the other hand, if Russia and United States make up, assuming that after the Alaska summit
Yeah,
and the end of
yeah.
the Ukraine conflict, there is a defreezing of ties, then let's see what happens in terms of the larger BRICS agenda and Russian role in it.
Absolutely, all eyes on 15th August. Let's see what happens. And actually, I think all eyes are every day in India at 7 p.m. When the clock strikes 7, we all look to Truth Social to see what's going to be uploaded next. But let's take a look, and these are final thoughts. India's strategic positioning, balancing between the West and global South. Mithali, could India's leadership in BRICS open up new avenues for infrastructure investment and technology partnerships in the global South?
No, Sanjana, absolutely. That's something that we're already seeing. So if you look at it, of course, when we look at infrastructure investments, the Japanese have been a leading donor, a leading partner, in a sense, for India. The Koreans have started increasing their investments in Indian infrastructure, long-term projects, for example, the high-speed railways and the dedicated freight corridors. And of course, the World Bank and ADB have been long-term partners and will continue to be so. But over time, we've already noticed that AIIB, which is the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and the new development bank, that's NDB, have come in as very significant co-financiers for a number of infrastructure projects alongside the government of India. So I do believe that deeper engagement in the BRICS is something that we need considerably to expand our depth of infrastructure investments, not only in a transport or energy space, but in social infrastructure as well, particularly water, sanitation, and affordable housing, which are extremely important needs for us as a population. And secondly, I think what becomes very critical is also trade. And I think we have to speak about trade every time we talk about BRICS, because India needs to focus on the 3Ds. We need to focus on diversification, dialogue, and diplomacy. And at the end of the day, that is what will bring us new markets. And diversification is the most important of them all, because it's not only about getting into Western markets and Western economies. Of course, those are very important important for the short run. But as we move ahead, the growth in incomes across Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, these are the fastest growing economies in the world today. And of course, GCC, UAE, these markets are critical. So
Correct.
it's important for us to maintain that diversification.
Ambassador, I'm going to take one last question. I have under a minute left. If I were to ask you in one or two sentences, how can India use BRICS to strengthen its ties with the global south without jeopardizing critical partnerships with Western economies? What would you say?
No, I think there is no contradiction there. I think India will continue to increase its economic cooperation wherever it can with the countries of the global south. And at the same time, the goal of maintaining good cooperative relations with much of the West will proceed forward as well. So I don't see the contradiction, and I think there is a sense of confidence in Delhi that this can be handled quite astutely, as Ambassador Sibal said earlier.
All right. Thank you so much to all my panelists for your time and for your comprehensive insight and analysis into this very important issue. BRICS may not yet be the alternative global order, but it's clearly no longer just a symbolic forum. For the global south, it offers a seat at the table and the chance to shape the agenda. For India, it's both an opportunity and a diplomatic balancing act. Whether BRICS can deliver will depend on whether its members can move past their differences and act with purpose. If they can, the global south might find its collective voice louder than ever before. I'm Sanjana, and this was The Big Question. Good night.